Welcome back to the Green Beans Go channel. It's your host, me, and I'm going to cut right to it. We don't have one game this week. We have two games on Monday Night Football. Yes, a week two doubleheader, staggered start, super spectacular, whatever you want to call it. I'm excited. But before I give you all of my information that I've collected, consider subscribing because at the end of the day, this roof over my head needs paid for, and I can't pay for it unless I'm getting ad revenue. Are you kidding me? So I'm just going to be honest. If you hit subscribe, it helps me grow my channel. If I grow my channel, I can get ad revenue. Guys, it's simple. It's very simple. So if you want to subscribe, baby, thank you very much. Let's get into it. Okay, guys, I get it. When you throw four teams up on the screen, you expect one of them to bring excitement. And honestly, none of these four truly excite me. I'm excited to see what Deshaun Watson is able to do in Cleveland. Outside of that, Derek Carr is in New Orleans now. Bryce Young, the rookie, at Carolina. And the Steelers have quite a few weapons on the team offensively with Freiermuth, Allen Robinson, Deontay Johnson, and Najee Harris. But we'll talk about what that means for this game because we do have some injuries to some of those guys. As always, we'll start with the promos. DraftKings is offering their Monday Night Football up 10 early win. So if you bet a team and they go up by 10, you automatically win the bet even if they lose the game. There's a 50% profit boost on a 3-leg parlay on FanDuel. And I'm disappointed in FanDuel a little bit here. 2 games, perfect opportunity to offer us 2 profit boosts. They're only offering 1. A little disappointed. Prime time. First, no, we're not talking Deion Sanders, guys. Enough. Can we have one day where we don't talk about Colorado football? First touchdown insurance on Bet Rivers. You bet someone to score the first touchdown. If they score it all, you get your bet back. So we will begin with the game that kicks off first. That is the game in Carolina. The Saints come to town. It's going to be beautiful. It's going to be 80 degrees. The sun's going to be down. There's hardly any wind. I am excited to see what these two quarterbacks can do with their new teams. But before we talk about them, let's talk about last week. The Saints were in the most uneventful game of the week, probably a 15-16 victory over the Tennessee Titans. There were 8 field goals in this game, 1 touchdown that came 88 seconds left in the third. They played almost 3 full quarters without getting into the end zone, so sort of unusual there. As far as the Panthers go, they lost by 2 touchdowns to the Falcons in Atlanta, and it was weird because Atlanta didn't look great. I mean, they couldn't get anything going on the passing game. Algier and Robinson, obviously great dual backs in this league. Going to be fun to watch this year. But as far as the Panthers go, pretty much a letdown in that game. They did run the ball well, which was probably their only shining piece. But Young looked young. All right, I think his passer rating was something like 48. So he did not have the best game on the road. He gets to open up first game in Carolina on Monday night. Looking at the offenses, and we do not have to talk too much about this because you see a lot of yellow and red, which means they struggled. Super small sample size, we know that. Okay, 10 points and 16 points, so not a lot to go on. I will say that Derek Carr didn't look half bad in his first game. He was finding a lot of rapport with Chris Olave immediately. Michael Thomas was second in receptions to Chris Olave, and then Shathid had a couple of deep balls. So he looks to be finding rhythm as far as the Panthers goes. Like I said, 154 rush yards, so they rushed the ball okay on 32 attempts. But outside of that, not a lot to show. As far as defense goes, Saints looked pretty solid on defense. A lot of green here, only allowed 15 points. Kept Tannehill under 200 yards and forced him to throw 3 picks. So good defensive showing from them at home. As far as the Panthers, really good against the pass. Obviously, we expected Pitts and London to play a little better in that game. I think they had something like a 1 catch the whole game. Pretty pathetic from them. I know London found the end zone today or Sunday, so we won't be too critical. But they did allow 2 rushing touchdowns and 1 passing touchdown last week. So definitely a little lopsided here in how these teams have performed. Looking at the numbers, the Saints are a minus 155 favorite, which feels a little generous to me. I think there's a little bit of value here. I know they're on the road. I know these divisional games always get a little wonky. I would put them closer to a minus 180. They are a 3-point favorite, minus 3 right now. I bet this ticks up minus 3.5 by kickoff, and the over-under is set at 39.5. I don't have a lean on that total at all. I think it's pretty close to right. So because there are two games, I laid off this game just a bit. I'm going to track all of these as official plays, but what we're going to do is we're going to use our DraftKings up 10 early win on the Saints at minus 155. We're going to use our 50% profit boost on FanDuel, and we're going to swing for the fences. Why not? Right? They're giving us this profit boost. Let's try to knock their teeth in. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We get a little surgical here. We're going to go Saints minus 6.5. Like I said, I think the Saints are a much better team. I think Bryce Young is going to struggle against the Saints defense when he struggled against the Falcons defense last week. So I think the Saints are better, and I think he will struggle more. I think the Saints will also shut down what they do well, which is run the ball. So I really think Carolina is in for a long night offensively. I do think that Derek Carr gets it going and gets it going early to his receivers, but ultimately, Jamal Williams, I like him to find the end zone not once but twice. Okay, so this first bet here, Saints minus 6.5 is the first leg. Second leg, Jamal Williams, 2 touchdowns. Didn't get one last week, didn't look great, but I think this is the night, and why not go for 2? And finally, Rashid Shaheed, over 40.5 receiving yards. Now, he was third on the team in targets last week. However, he had the longest catch, and I know he's a big play guy for Derek Carr, so over 40.5 could come on one catch in the game. I was looking at his receptions. It was over 3.5 at plus money. That was tempting, but overall, I think this 40.5 has the most value, something he could get on one catch. So that pays $380. That's what I'm writing. Feel free to tail, but you absolutely can use this wager however you would like, or this boost however you would like. And finally, the 1 unit play that I am going to roll with is Saints halftime, full time. I think the Saints come out hot. I think they hold Carolina on offense to 10 to 17 points in this game. So I think Saints win the first half and end up winning the game. I like that bet at plus 120. I realize a little bit of a double dip here with the Saints, but I'll go all in on the road, and we'll see what happens. And the game that kicks off at 8:30 is a Heinz Field catch-up special. We have the Browns visiting Pittsburgh, a rival. We've seen these teams go at it in the past. We've seen Mason Rudolph's helmet get yanked and swung around, and Myles Garrett go crazy. So it's always an exciting matchup. It's predicting showers. I looked at the hourly, and it seems like by 8 o'clock, this should be irrelevant. So Cleveland played in a pretty nasty, sloppy game last week. I don't think it's going to be like that. Again, keep your eye on it. It's only a 42% chance of rain all day. I think it's going to dry up by kickoff. Last week, as I was saying, Cleveland gets a pretty convincing win over another AFC North rival, the Cincinnati Bengals, who looked awful on offense and defense. It was a 24-3 win, but like I said, it's a game that I'm kind of throwing out the window just because of how wet and sloppy it was. Those conditions are rare to play in the fall in the NFL, so I don't think we can pull a lot from that. And I put an asterisk by that with the inflection in my voice because I'm going to come back to why a few things in this game that I do think we can draw from. As for the Steelers, they played one of the better teams in the NFL, probably a team that's going to compete for the NFC title in the San Francisco 49ers, who beat them 30-7. They had some bright spots on offense. I think they have a lot of passing weapons. They had 5 players with over 6 targets. I know that the game script, them trailing, caused them to have to throw more than maybe they would like to, so that is why we see that inflation in the numbers there. However, I do think Kenny Pickett has a pretty solid core of receivers and tight ends around him, so that is something I'm watching in this game as well. I did not talk injuries in the other game because there really weren't a ton, but this one is quite a bit different. I think the biggest talk about the Browns is either Shelby Harris, who is limited, he'll probably play, but Amari Cooper, their wide receiver, is doubtful, and I would say he's probably out of this game. Now, Watson went to him as much as he did Elijah Moore last week. Both of them were tied in targets. Outside of that, he's got Donovan Peoples-Jones and, David Bell. Marquise Goodwin, I believe, is on the team, although he didn't have a target last week. So I think they'll be okay without Amari Cooper. I think he has enough around him, especially with Nick Chubb, that the offense and David Njoku at tight end, the offense will find its way, but Cooper is a big loss. As for the Steelers, they did have a probably comparable loss in Deontay Johnson. Now, again, they do have Allen Robinson and they do have George Pickens, so they are a little bit better in terms of experience and depth at the wide receiver position. They also have a rookie, Calvin Austin, who had 6 targets last week, so that is a guy you could keep your eye on. Again, a big blow to what looks like on paper the receiving core, but I think, again, they will be fine in this game without him. I don't even want to talk about this because of how irrelevant Cleveland's game was against Cincinnati. I can't even take away from their offense, and the Steelers played probably a top 4 defense in the league last week, so obviously their offense did not look great. So I'm not going to pull from that right now. I think this is a bit of a trappy type of game based on how people are going to bet it from what we saw in week 1. Defense, again, the Browns looked good, but if you give Joe Burrow and that offense a little bit better of a condition, do they play a little better? I think they do. So, again, Steelers defense didn't look great, but San Francisco has a lot of weapons. So, again, sort of a mix and match sort of specialty there. We will talk about bets because there is something that I really like as we look at these lines. Speaking of the lines, we have the Browns as a small road favorite. -130 on the money line is the best price for them. Steelers, if you like it, +123 is your best place over on Bet Rivers. I lean Browns. I'm not putting any action on them, but that would be my lean. They're 2 or 2.5. Books are split on this. Half of them are sitting at -2.5. Half of them are still sitting at 2. So if you want to lock in a spread bet, if you want Steelers, look for that 2.5. If you want Browns, look for that 2. Make sure you shop around. And the over/under is at 38, baby. I'm moist. I'm relatively moist at that number. And I will tell you why right now. And we may as well start with it. I have over 38 as a full unit play. I think the narrative for AFC North rivalries is just this defensive, low-scoring slobber knocker, right? And in this one, I don't see that. We saw the Browns be able to move the ball well against a solid defense in the Bengals in the worst conditions you could imagine for a September afternoon. So if they put up 24 in those conditions, I think this night game in Pittsburgh, a team who we saw get scored 30 on, albeit by a pretty diverse and talented offense in the Niners, I think the Browns have no problem putting up 24 to 28 points in this one. As for the Steelers, I think last week was not a good test for this Browns defense. I think they had a lot of lucky breaks, things that they couldn't control. The weather, go their way. The weather was playing as a 12th man out there. So I think that Kenny Pickett has a hard test last week against the Niners, and I think he rebounds. And it's kind of like you're swimming against the current in week 1, and now you get to turn around and go the other way. I think the Browns are certainly weaker on defense than the Niners. So I can see the Pittsburgh Steelers here with Najee Harris getting him going. I mean, he only had like 6 rushes last year. Last week, Jalen Warren only had 5, so they didn't run the ball at all. I think they find a little balance. I think Kenny Pickett then is able to open up to Allen Robinson, to George Pickens, to Pat Freiermuth. I like the Steelers to score 24 to 28 points. So I think this total at 38 is a great spot to kind of go against the narrative of what AFC North matchups typically are. Looking at a player prop, and this is only 0.6 units, but I want to show you again how sometimes you see these outliers with value. Deshaun Watson, anytime touchdown score at +600 on FanDuel. Again, I locked it in at 0.6 units already Sunday night. by the time you watch this video, it could have already dipped down. I would take this probably all the way to plus 500. I think it still has value there compared to these other books. He had one last week. I think he will have the opportunity to run it again, and he's a guy who we haven't seen in the league for a few years. We know his off the field massage, whatever was going on. So, yeah, I think he is a guy that likes to run and a guy we may have forgotten that likes to run. So I do not mind a 0.6 unit play on plus 600 there. Finally, I'm taking 2 receiver props, and if you want to bet these now, go ahead. If you want to wait until FanDuel puts out a line, I don't mind that. FanDuel does not have any receiving props. I think they're waiting on news for Amari Cooper to release. However, Elijah Moore had as many targets as Cooper did last week, and if Cooper's not going to be in the game, I expect Elijah Moore to continue to receive those targets and then some. So Elijah Moore over 43.5 yards. It's a total he got last week in horrible conditions. I'm a little dumbfounded at this line. So that is absolutely a slam from me. And then finally, Allen Robinson. He led the Pittsburgh Steelers with targets last week. And now you pull out Deontay Johnson, who was second in the team in targets, and you're giving me 31.5 yards? I don't know if this is an overreaction from, what we saw the Browns do to T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd and Jamar Chase, and so we're thinking that they have just locked down corners. I understand that Denzel Ward is a talented corner, but as far as depth of this defense goes, I don't see it. So Allen Robinson over 31.5. Good golly gravy. Give me that line every day of the week and twice on Mondays, and that's what we see tomorrow. Again, guys, thanks for coming by. We will track all of this, and I realize it's kind of a cluster, but we are here for a good time and maybe, hopefully, a long time on the YouTube. So if you don't mind hitting that subscribe button, sticking around, coming by, dropping a comment, we appreciate it here at the Green Beans Go Enterprise. We'll see you next time.